Hello, this is Thomas Sheltra for Moreland University, and today we're going to be looking at standards 3 and 4 for Module 39. I'm going to share my screen here. And so this is my e-portfolio. And if we're looking at for the standards 3 and 4 for the behavior plan, here is the capstone project that looks at some of the interventions that we can use at our school. And mainly when we're going to be looking at any sort of interventions that go along with standard 3, if we look at here. So one is the fair treatment of students. Oops, sorry. Fair treatment of students. And then the next guiding question is equitable access to effective teaching staff, and essentially making sure that when we go into the classroom, teachers have what they need to succeed for teaching a diverse student body. And then the next is a school behavior plan, and then preparing students for a global society, or as we like to do in our mission statement for BASIS, is global leaders. We just don't want students to be in the global community, but we want them to be leading in the global community. And so the first set is a set of restorative practices. And generally speaking, the types of reward systems that we have for students. So one is English heroes. So that way they're speaking English in the classroom. And then the second one are get trackers. And those are for students who showcase the core values that we have at our school for BASIS. And then next, because I mean, our school at Wuhan is generally speaking, very homogenous. Um, one of the things that we want to do as a school is make sure that we appreciate Chinese culture. Even though when students are walking into our campus, we emphasize English only, and we have an international style curriculum. It is a balancing act of giving them a international education while at the same time um, caring about the values and the belief systems that they have when they walk into our school and into our classroom. But we also want to be mindful of the equity and the fairness that we give students when we have these sort of restorative practices, um, when they're sort of uh, misbehaving and we have to intervene. Um, the next is the instructional needs assessment. And so this is making sure that we have technology in the classroom that is working. And especially for standard 4, we're looking at curriculum instruction and assessment. So making sure that we have strong instructional practices, effective use of technology for learning and teaching. And then also making sure that we have assessments and the use of assessment data. And so for this template right here, I'm just going to zoom in. The first training session that we wanted to look at was utilizing Teams more effectively. And when I spoke with my mentor, Mr. Cumberworth, we specifically highlighted the fact that for next year we're going to be using Teams in a whole different way, but that it's going to be more structured. So that way, if you go from my classroom to one of my history colleagues or English or chemistry teachers, Teams page, that everything is going to be structured in a similar way. So that way, it's easy for parents and for students to navigate. And then the next is using MAP, AP score, benchmark scores, and I should include comp scores in that as well, to make sure that we're using data not just to keep track of numbers, but we want to be able to use data in order to analyze what's going on in our classroom, what's going on in our school, maybe be able to see the types of trends for certain students, and be able to use that data to drive instruction. So that would be another workshop that we would do. Um, Same thing for um, ELL in the classroom, using certain technology to help with that, especially when it comes to history. So in English, one of the main focuses that when it comes to APs, those are going to be the most writing dense subjects. Everything else, the FRQs, are not going to be that demanding. So it's good to make sure that we're always emphasizing for English and social studies ELL strategies to help teachers and help students. And then the next one is just digital citizenship routines for how we can make sure that we continue to keep up the academic rigor in the classroom. And one of the artifacts that I really wanted to showcase was because it is really difficult when we don't have much of a diverse student body between our international school and our bilingual school here at Wuhan. But just to highlight the ways in which our school, even though we teach an AP curriculum in high school and a Western style curriculum for all other age groups. Just to show you our school calendar here, and then in the dark green, so we have this right here is our national holiday, Chinese national holiday. But then here we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas break, and then we have Chinese New Year, including the April Qingming holiday and then the May Day holiday. So you can see that in our school year, we balance between Western holidays for those faculty and staff who are expats, and then also for our Chinese staff and Chinese students. So that way, there's a nice little blend between East and West. And then the next here is there's just some pictures from our Christmas market, or our winter market, I should say. Uh, Hold on, let me just change that right there. But our winter market, this is a great way, and this goes into parent engagement as well. When we get into my school priority number 4, it's a great way to end the first semester to have booths that are run by students, run by parents, and then we have school plays before this. So it's a great way to get the community together and celebrate the winter season, and to make sure that we really are building a community here at the school. Here is from when we had our Chinese New Year's performances with dragons coming and dancing. And then also here is some of our students and our staff taking part in some traditional Chinese games. And this again was another great way to, um, showcase what Chinese New Year is, why it's so important in China as a holiday, and all of the traditions and the cultural rituals that go around with it, and to have everybody participate in a very unique experience. And this was before Chinese New Year, so it was a great way to celebrate it and get everything going for the holiday season. Um, Here we show the Lantern Festival. And so this is another part of the Chinese New Year holiday. And so this is a great way for students and for parents to get together, and also to build that parent and community engagement. That is something that's very crucial for schools, especially when you think of the transactional nature of these private international and bilingual schools in China and other countries. Making sure that we can bring parents in and have events, and highlight that our school really cares about the diversity in our schools is a great way to show community support. And then here is a student in the middle. He created these fans for Teachers Day, and he's one of my economics students, and he's a really great kid. And it was also one of the things, just to show support for teachers, but the fact that he took the time to actually make those by hand was really something. So that's just to highlight how we balance Eastern and Western kind of values, but also where we show re appreciation for Chinese culture and the Chinese diversity. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but for standard four, just to highlight one of the audits that we did for technology. And one of the things that we want to be cognizant of is the fact that we have the types of technology for students and for teachers, um, and not just for the short term, but for the long term. So ways that students can use technology, the types of Wi-Fi that we have, and any of the sort of issues that we might have to navigate to make sure that we have the longevity for the use of technology. One of the things that I've definitely noticed at our school for the needs assessment when it comes to the types of infrastructure is making sure that we have solid Wi-Fi. Because we are an SAT school and an AP school, and so making sure that we have that strong infrastructure of Wi-Fi to make sure that students can take exams without there being any sort of technological issues. Um, so going along, so some of the things. So one of the things that I really wanted to highlight next year, especially as social studies chair, is creating cultural events. And so one of the things that we did in one of our modules was to create four different types of cultural and heritage events that we could showcase at our school. And I brought this to the attention to my head of school during one of our chair discussions. And one of them is kind of incorporating all four of these, but maybe doing an international week where we have teachers and students, play music, do dancing, maybe a play, especially like when it comes to English, short stories, or books. Um, and food would be great. So that would be another way of highlighting, some of the diversity in our faculty and staff that come from different countries, and a way of showcasing their cultures and their beliefs, and bringing everyone together, and of course driving home that idea of parent and community engagement. When it comes to standard four, so we talked about the use of technology. Um, the other thing is, so one is the behavior plan here. And so basically I took our behavior matrix and kind of tried to just clean it up a little bit to show the different levels of severity that we have as far as what the levels are, who are the primary responders, and then the sort of the chain in which events happen, and then what are the consequences of those events, and when parents get notified, what happens as far as restorative justice practices, and then what happens as far as escalation and the formal consequence. Um, the other is the coaching conversations. So, as one of my responsibilities as chair, I'm supposed to go to classrooms for social studies. We also really emphasize all teachers, not just chairs. to go into classrooms and to look at lessons and observe from other teachers, not just within our own subject, but across the school, just to get an idea of the types of teaching methods, teaching strategies, classroom management strategies that all teachers have, so that way we can just be better professionals on a daily basis. And so here's just a general sort of lesson that I observed from one of my colleagues, Mr. Torres. And then this was the general comments that I made based on my observation, and then the reflection that he had after that. And then the other thing is that as part of these observations, we also have coaching conversations that go into, or, that are post observation. And so one of the things that can do is that it helps us as teachers get an idea of sort of the snapshot of what that lesson was, and sort of paint a broader picture of, where in the unit that lesson was, what were the strategies that the teacher was using, how did the students respond, did it fit the academic rigor that we're always looking for at basis, and was it student-centered learning? And these kinds of observations and coaching conversations that we can have help um, deliver that, the things that we're looking for in the future, as far as where those conversations can really help teachers in the long run. And so another uh, another artifact here is using assessment data. So here was a diagnostic test that I gave my grade 8 economics students about a month ago. So, no, the beginning of May. And so I was looking for all of the answers that had 70% or below, as far as student correct answers. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to take all of this data, and I wanted to show students um, where they've been getting the answers wrong. What was the correct answer? What was the most common incorrect answer? And then what was the concept of why students were getting it wrong? Because sometimes you can't necessarily tell by these numbers unless you go to the actual questions. But one of the, so right here, oh, which one is it that I wanted to really look at? I forget which one, but well, you can take a look at number 43 here. And so it was almost a majority incorrect. Well, it is a majority incorrect, excuse me. And so it's going back and looking at the question of why they were getting that wrong. So 43. So we're looking at the perfectly competitive market. And so here we can go, and I created some examples of the concepts that they need to be looking for, and then some sample MCQ questions that we can use to review. So again, this is not trying to reinvent the entire review process by just having students do the whole thing over again. If they're getting 70% or higher, then I feel generally confident that students understand the material. But if it's below 70%, which is C, below a C, then that's where I really want to make sure that students are fully understanding the concepts that it is that we're doing. It helps me differentiate, and then it also helps me um, review in a purposeful and meaningful way. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to do in my department, and I know also as a school, is making sure that we're using data not just to collect information, but we're using it in a meaningful and purposeful way where we can collect the numbers and collect the information and then use that to drive instruction and review process. So that way it's easier for us as teachers. And then also it's easier for students. So we're not like, and I want to use this word in a positive way, but we're targeting the review. So we're not targeting students, but we're targeting the review. So that way, it's we're not just covering everything, but we're specifically giving the students what they need based on what they've been getting wrong. And so that's where I found this artifact to be very useful. um, and then one of the last things is a checklist is looking at our curriculum and our content and one of the assessments and creating a checklist for teachers in economics or history or chemistry or whatever, but looking at their benchmark exams and kind of looking at obviously this is sort of a collaborative effort, but making sure that it fits our alignment. The questions are of a certain quality, the clarity and age appropriateness, and basically, does it fit the standards of what it is that we need here at Basis? And I obviously I'm using economics as the example, but this could be for any subject. Here at Basis. And then documents that I'm going to go for next year again. So one thing is for standard four is the observation checklist. Hopefully for department chairs, I'd like to speak again with my mentor to make sure what things need to be cleaned up. But basically looking at our TL strands. So that way, when chairs or teachers are going into the classroom, they can see again when we go into a classroom, we're just looking, out of a 50-minute class, we're probably only there for about 25, 30 minutes, unless there's something specific we need to be there for the entire class. So really, we're just looking at a snapshot, right? So every class, does not have to fit a certain mold, but there are certain things that we want to look for as far as RTL strands. And so when we go into that classroom and we just are looking at that snapshot, what are the takeaways that we can see? And then as we continue to observe, sort of paint a broader picture of the class, the teacher, and then also the student responsiveness to that teacher. So here's a checklist that we hopefully can use for chairs next year. And then because we have our coaching, our observation, and then also our coaching conversations, here's some things that we can look at and guide teachers to the reflections based on our observation and what it is that we see. And then the other thing is, I showed you this artifact right here. And one of the things that I was very appreciative of is the fact that, Mr. Torres really took the time, and I had permission to use his name, otherwise I would have blanked it out. But one of the things that I was really grateful for was the fact that he took the time to write the self-reflection and look at the lesson and look at based on what we had talked about previously after the class. And so, one of the things that has kind of upset me a little bit is that not all teachers are responsive like that in their reflections, and that they kind of are just uh, giving reflections just to go through the motions and get it over with. And I can understand from the perspective of having a lot of things to do as a teacher. But one of the things that, we want to make sure that teachers are doing is that they are looking at their instructional practices and they are reflecting on what it is that they could be doing better. And I think all of us as teachers, should be reflective of that, um, to make sure that we are doing what it is that we can do in the best way possible to achieve student outcomes and learning objectives that are going to help our students. And at the end of the day, do well on their APs, do well on their SATs, and do well on their comprehensive exams. As much as we want to be student centered, as much as we want to give students all of the materials that it is to be successful in the classroom, we also need to make sure that our instruction is purposeful and meaningful to make sure that they are successful on their assessments as well. Um, and so when we go back and we look at the standards 3 and 4, um, I think, um, generally speaking, when it comes to the first part, the fair treatment of students, it is outstanding. Um, when we look at the equitable access to effective teaching staff, I also think that is outstanding, especially when it comes to the fact that our TL strand, and I really emphasize the TL1 strand, which is getting to know our students, building those bridges, and making sure that teachers are doing what they can for students, excuse me, to build trust, build relationships, and not just to be friendly with students and be popular with students, but to show them that the teaching strategies that they're bringing into the classroom is going to help them succeed, and build that relationship of respect. Um, and that goes into their cultural differences. Effective leader, so addressing student misconduct. So again, I showed you the behavior plan and the behavior matrix. Um, so to me, I think that this is going to be, I'm going to say proficient on this side. So one of the things that I guess we could be doing better, and I'm just going to be reflective on my own practices, is that when it comes to things like behavior logs or EIPs or even get tracker awards, I'm extremely inconsistent. And so one of the things that I also need to be doing better of is making sure that when I hear students speaking Chinese, I give them an EIP. When I give students a warning on their behavior and then they do something again, give them a behavior log, rather than trying to make it an in-house solution where I'm solving all of those problems, because it's not fair to the next teacher that goes into the classroom where they speak Chinese or misbehave and they get a behavior log or an EIP. And then they say, oh, well, Mr. Thomas didn't give me, a behavior log when I did that. So I need to be more consistent. And the other thing is being consistent in awarding students when they have great behavior, they showcase our core values. They're speaking English, or they're helping other students in English. And there's many times where I could have done a better job. And so that's where I think I can go from being proficient to outstanding. Um, Again, when it comes to preparing students for global society or being global leaders, I think that I hover between proficient to outstanding. But one of the things I do think is that when it comes to social studies, part of the whole aspect of our curriculum is making sure that students are thinking outside of the Chinese perspective. Because we're an AP class when it comes to high school subjects, so I think that we're always making students focus on that idea. Um, so I think I land somewhere between proficient and outstanding there. Again, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So I think, of course, as a chair, but also as a teacher, making sure that the curriculum aligns with the mission and the values of the school. I absolutely think that's outstanding, and showing you the artifacts from my grade 8 and also the benchmark assessment. And also a coaching conversation, making sure that we align with what the school wants. Instructional practices. Um, so going in, I think that's outstanding. Going into the classroom, observing other teachers, also being reflective on my own teaching when I'm being observed. And so, especially when it comes to the learning practices, equity and inclusion, that's the TL1 strand that we have basis, and then the next is effective use of technology in learning and teaching. So not that that has been, I guess, showcased that much as far as an artifact. So I'm going to land myself on the proficient, but we do use technology in the classroom again, and we use for and teaching. I showed you the diagnostic test where I used the grade cam item analysis. So we are using technology to help drive instruction. I could show, I guess I don't have enough artifacts to showcase where it could go into the outstanding. So I'll just land myself on proficient there. And then planning school-wide assessments. So I'm gonna show that that is outstanding because of the benchmark data that we had, and then also the assessment questionnaire, making sure that those assessments that we give students are of high quality, age appropriate, and making sure that the questions fit the standards that it is that we want students to achieve. And then the last one, the use of assessment data. I guess this is where I will land myself on outstanding, just because I do use a ton of grade cam for my own assessments, whether they're formative or summative, and using that data to drive instruction. And as we get into the review for the comps and previously the AP, using that data. So that's all I have for standards 3 and for 4. I'll post the vlog up here. And then when I meet with Mr. Cumberworth, I will post the mentor meeting in the minutes here. And so yeah, so that is it. And thank you.